All right, guys. John Dorsey is officially out as GM of the Browns. This happened about a little over an hour ago, I guess. And we're gonna get into it, live reaction, everything like that. I want to say first and foremost that obviously we could see this coming. There was speculation that Dorsey was going to be out immediately when Freddie was gone. There was a whole bunch of leaked reports about Dave Podesta wanting to get more control and Dorsey backing up Freddie. You could even read through the lines a little bit of just the statement that was given by Dorsey, the official statement when Freddie was gone versus the official statement from the Haslam family and everything. But this just went live, and Dad, I want to get your thoughts on it before I kind of go off on my own thing.
Oh, you and I were talking on the phone. We're both in our cars, and I pull into the bank, and we hang up the phone. We're going to talk later, blah 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 about coaching, and all of a sudden I see my Twitter feed or whatever, and it says that Dorsey's gone. So I
Yeah.
call you back immediately. I mean,
Yeah, we
I'm
literally were on the phone. We're like, "Hey, have you heard any news? Anything going on?" And we're like, "No, I
oh,
haven't seen anything." And I was like, "All right, cool." So I hang up the phone. I thought you were butt dialing me because I was like, oh, "My dad's calling me back. Hold on, let me take this." So I take it, and you're like, "Dorsey's out," and I was like, "Oh my god, we got to go live."
so I mean, that's how shocked I am. I'm shocked from the standpoint of he was such a tremendous influence in getting us to the level of excitement and the fans back in the seats and people looking at the draft and wondering what he's going to do next,
Yeah.
getting the talent in. He gets Odell Beckham. We start off the season as high as a kite, and the kite crashes on day one with the Titans. Um, I wasn't in favor of the Kitchens move. I thought Greg Williams deserved a shot. He would have been a more stabilizing factor. I think Dorsey maybe wanted a little bit more control. He can control Kitchens, whereas he couldn't maybe control Williams as much. If you read the statements by the Haslams and by Dorsey, they're pretty much consistent, but they do talk about they could not reach agreement as to what Dorsey's role going forward was going to be.
Right.
And the Haslams wanted him to be a talent scout and line up all these great players like he had been and potentially work on trades, but not be involved with the coaching and who's going to play and who's not going to play, et cetera, et cetera. So he said, hey, I'm that's the role I want to play, and you guys are not going to let me play that. You're going to bring in a new uh, coach that's not going to listen to me, that type of thing. So I'm out of here if we're not going to play by those rules. And I would say fine. You always have those types of disagreements. You agree to disagree. But if you look at the Haslam's track record, what makes them think that they can run an NFL team? Every decision that they have made, other than hiring Dorsey, has been a mistake, a huge mistake. And all the Twitters that I've read are people saying, that the Haslams are dead to me. That this is the worst decision.
Mm-hmm.
They're terrible, etc. The Haslams must have been listening to Deep Podesta, and he must have been the one in their ear. They like McDaniel so much that they're willing to bring him and bring a new GM with him and let that go. One or two reports indicate that Deep Podesta does not want to run the football operations. He doesn't want to get into the weeds there.
Okay.
So I'm not sure what Deep Podesta's role is other than to be a nice guy and to talk to the Haslams and have some influence as to who the coach is going to be and that type of thing.
Yeah.
But this throws everything for the next 2 weeks until the coach is decided. And then you got to do a new general manager. And if it comes in with the coach, then you got everybody on the same page. You got the owner, GM, Deep Podesta, and the new coach all on the same page. If
Yep.
that's McDaniels, fine. I have and maybe it's McCarthy too. Those two seem to be the two leading candidates. So I'm as shocked as anybody.
Yep.
Um, I'm going to try to get Brownie Post up so I can read some of the what you call
Yeah, guys. So we
the
have a few guys
chats.
in there. We got Two Bras Film, Max Nikolenko, Wallace Lockett, Rumsey, Typical Gamer 2002, DF Sports, The Truth. Jake is in the house. Guys, I see you. I'm reading your chats. So this is what these are my thoughts on it. I think that the Haslam family, Jimmy and Dee, have now solidified themselves as the worst owners in professional football. Dan Snyder has taken a step back. At least Dan Snyder could see that, hey, this wasn't going the right direction, and got rid of his guy. But the Haslam family are so inept. They need to go back to managing truck stops in Kentucky or wherever the hell they're from. I am so mad at this move. John Dorsey, the guy who wanted to wake up the sleeping giant that's the Cleveland Browns. The guy who drafted Nick Chubb and Baker Mayfield and brought in Jarvis Landry and brought in and traded for Odell. This is the guy that you've decided to say, like, hey, I'm not going to make it work for him. Now,
Right.
okay, but now he wasn't completely without fault. He made the move. He decided on Freddie, and it was probably something to do with the fact that he does like a lot of control. He wants to have that control in place so he can start putting the chess pieces around, right? And it did not work out with Freddie Kitchens. Everybody was calling for Freddie's head really early on, okay? So as you were saying, and whatever the reports are, this is what we were talking about in the car before when we just broke. That it is a move that they want John Dorsey to do what John Dorsey does best, which is a talent evaluating, a head of scouting operations. Right. At this time in John Dorsey's career, he's not saying, "Hey, I'm gonna let Paul DePodesta from Moneyball." He's not gonna come in here and take over for what I've done for this organization. I am firmly in the camp that the Haslams should be sitting there, gassing up diesel engines and truck stops and letting the football people do the football things. And John Dorsey's a football guy, and I think it's a giant mistake that we let him go. I think it's ridiculous that I think we should have been sitting there going, how can we, what do you need, John? What can we do better? You missed on the first head coach. Let's not miss on the second.
Right.
To sit there and it bothers me that we're going, it is now dumpster fire all over again.
Yeah, I mean, to lose a guy with that kind of talent and that kind of passion, I mean, he wore that Browns sweatshirt every day.
Yeah.
Every time you saw John Dorsey,
that was his brand.
Trademark. That was his trademark. Even Baker could do an imitation of him, and play it in front of the guys. That was hysterical because he is such a character.
Yep.
But you can't deny the passion, and you can't deny the talent that he was able to put together, which none of the other coaches in drafting or in the GMs that have been, and he's been there, I guess he's been there a couple of years, right? DePodesta and Dorsey, I think they came around the same time. Why the Haslams wanted him in there for whatever reason, I don't know. But that level of a guy like the Bruce Allen guy in Washington can be toxic, can be really toxic. Especially if you have another layer like you did with Dorsey and also the head coach. And obviously Dorsey knew enough to get the talent, to get Hugh Jackson out of there. He even went and took
Todd Haley.
Todd Haley out of there, and he gave it to Greg Williams. I think he made his biggest mistake by not letting him have one more year to see if he could do it. He went to Kitchens, and that didn't work out.
Yep.
And that gave Podesta a way to chat in Haslam's ear about, well, see, he's not a genius. He's not a god. we need to go in this direction and this direction. We need to take more power away from him, not give him more. We need to select the coach that we want, not the coach that he wants. And in the end, Haslam said, okay, fine. I'll give you another opportunity. I'll let you stay with the club and do this. And Dorsey said, no, I'm not doing it. Just like you said, it's beneath me to do that. And if I was in the same boat, I would have done the same thing. He's a tremendous commodity. He may not get a job next week, but there are a lot of GM type slots that are out there that would love to have his history to turn their teams around.
Look what he did in Green Bay. Look what he did for Kansas City, and then look what he did for Cleveland.
Right.
I mean, yes, we had an off year this year. Yes, Freddie was a problem. Freddie was not the answer, right? So he made a mistake there. And I think if it really comes down to it, if Dorsey, what's gonna, I want to hear the reports that come out of it, because if I want to know some of the answers, I need some of the answers. I've been asking about Austin Corbett. Why is Austin Corbett? Why was he drafted in the second round and literally never given a chance? If the coaches was it the coaches who never gave him a chance, or was it Dorsey saying don't play him? That's one. And typically, your GM doesn't have the power to pick and choose who plays and who doesn't play. Yeah. That usually is not something that is given to the general manager. That's on the coaches to decide, hey, these are the players we got. We're going to put the best players on the field that we can. Rashard Higgins doesn't play all year. Right. That's another big question mark. Jannard Avery is gone. Now, there were a couple of the moves that you and I had talked about that were like, I think we're giving up on Carl Nassib too early.
Right.
We gave up on him too early, and then that came back to bite us when we played Tampa Bay.
Correct.
So there have been some moves that were left scratching our head. But if you look at like what we brought in and the talent to replace it, who would you rather have, Olivier Vernon or Carl Nassib? I mean, you look at moves like that, and you're like, all right. I mean, I get it. I guess you're right.
Matt Roscoe says DePodesta was there with Sashi. He was the one helping select players and trade down 1,000,000 times. I mean, Sashi got a lot of draft choices. I don't know how good the talent was that was ultimately selected under those guys before Dorsey got there. Mm-hmm. But anybody can play bad and line up draft choices. Look what Dolphins were doing this year. Look what the Jets were doing. They finally both of them.
Well, remember when Mangini was there, and all we did was trade back in the draft and trade back, and it's like pick a player.
Yeah, I mean, you have to have confidence. Dorsey gave the impression of confidence day one with Baker, even though he was criticized for taking Baker first.
Yeah.
He got Chubb when other people were passing on him because he had a bad knee in Georgia, but he was a great runner. He took a chance, turned out absolutely great.
Yep.
I don't know if he engineered the Hunt trade to get him from Kansas City.
Hunt wasn't traded. Hunt was just picked up.
Yeah, so
he was the one who drafted Hunt.
Yeah, so I mean, a quality player. Who else?
Well, the OBJ thing.
OBJ thing. Taki. You got Wilson.
5th round draft pick.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look
Greedy
at
Williams, I mean, come on, we got guys that can play.
Yep.
You just got to find the right coach to coach them.
Well, here's what, if you look at the puzzle pieces that you have to put together to be successful in the NFL, you have to have a talented roster. You're not going to win in the NFL with bad players. So I think we have that. I think we have the talent, at least the core level talent. Where we're missing it is offensive line was we basically had 2 guys on an offensive line. The rest were just bodies. We're just big, large
body
men.
after body. We're throwing in there. Can this guy be better? Maybe he is for a play, but then he's terrible on the
let's
next
bench
play.
Greg Robinson. Let's bring him back. So it's like so our offensive line was an absolute joke, and the Cincinnati game was really the end of it for me. You saw me tweeting, just clapping hands. Offensive line, way to go! Giving Baker Mayfield a fifth of a second. He hits his last step, And if he doesn't have his read right then, he doesn't have a chance to do second. He has to run or just duck to get sacked. Meanwhile, Andy Dalton, who's rushed for about 11 yards in his entire 10-year career, we make him look like Steve Young, diving for touchdowns.
All of them. We made all of those rookie quarterbacks, second-rate quarterbacks look much better.
Our defensive line, when Myles Garrett left the lineup,
right,
it was sayonara. Any chance of putting pressure on a quarterback, it was a joke.
And that signed Freddie's death warrant at that point. I mean, he was destined not to do well because he just lost his best defensive player for a stupid reason, and now he's got to figure out how to fill that hole and win games and call plays, and it was just too much for him. I feel bad for him. It sounds like Dorsey and Kitchens were still on the same page, and that's why they're both gone, because they were disagreeing with the way it needs to go. Kitchens first because he's on the front lines. He's looking at the 6-10 record. He's looking at disarray in the locker room, and more and more stories are going to come out about that. Probably it'll be interesting to see what kind of stories come out about Dorsey when he's gone.
Yep.
But if I'm a president of a company, NFL team, I'm an owner, my team's in disarray, I need to get him back on track. Maybe he goes to Cincinnati and straightens their team out and gets a first round draft choice and gets Burrow to go there.
Just to stick it to the Haslams.
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't know if he's really upset with them or just they don't know what they're doing, and it's a combination because
what has DePodesta won in his entire career? He was a front office assistant with the Indians, the A's, the Mets, and then
baseball.
Yeah, so he's a baseball guy. He's in Moneyball. He's the Moneyball guy, and then this is all it says. This whole Wikipedia is all about baseball, and then one sentence. On January 5th, 2016, Podesta was hired in National Football League Cleveland Browns to work as their chief strategy officer. That's it.
Chief strategy officer.
Yeah.
That is one of those, plug it up there, put it on the wall, and see if you can get people to salute it.
How many championships has this Harvard boy gotten? What has he done? I mean, it's great that you can move money around and you know how to operate within a salary cap, but we've had these eunuch level guys who are just whispering in the Haslam's ear, telling him to draft Deshaun Kaiser and and cut Joe Hayden. It's all of this sort of stuff. Right? These are the moves this is why it is the consistent dumpster fire in Cleveland, and it comes down to Jimmy and Dee Haslam. I tweeted out they are the worst thing that has happened to the Cleveland Browns since Art Modell. Currently 486 likes and 116.
They're the only ones, coming in after Art Modell. Modell sold it to them.
No. That was not the case. He sold it. Then Lerner picked it up. Remember Al Lerner?
Oh yeah.
So he was the Haslams weren't the next guys in there.
Oh, okay.
But they are just inept. They have no idea what they're doing. They're trusting a baseball strategist on what to do. It is. I gotta tell you, it is disappointing. And if you work for a corporation that this happened to, where leadership is turning over like this, the coaches are leaving, the front office is gonna change. I mean, I would be so demoralized unless the only caveat I would throw in there is say, unless stories come out that Dorsey is the one who created all the problems. And I don't think that's the case. I think it's going to come down to Freddie and Freddie's coaching staff and how he operated the team. Dorsey's job is to get players and select the coaches.
Yeah, Dorsey wasn't calling the defensive plays. You and I were screaming at the TV in terms of do something different, blitz, put pressure on these rookie quarterbacks. Even if you get burned,
play tight man coverage every once in a while,
right,
for Christ's sake.
Don't have a guy 30 yards down the field. I mean, Dorsey's not making that call. That's a defensive guy. That's a coaching decision. That's when you're the head coach and you go to the defensive guy and say, put some pressure on the quarterback. Rush, put 8 in the box and fill every gap and make him throw it within 2 seconds of getting the snap in a shotgun.
Yep.
Don't let him even drop back from under center before you have a guy that's draped all over him. Yeah. And they did not do. And the same thing with the offense. He wasn't the one calling the offensive plays. Freddie was. Mm-hmm. And how many times did we see the 2-minute drill? How many times did we see there has to be some urgency? Get back in the game. You're down 2 scores. Everybody, well, you don't want to panic. You know, blah blah. But when you're down 2 scores, you gotta put the 2-minute drill in place.
The only thing I'm thinking now, the question will be: will Elliott Wolf be elevated from assistant general manager to general manager? Okay,
well, that would speak well for McCarthy, probably.
If Elliott Wolf is elevated to general manager, that at least keeps a little bit of consistency there. And then depending upon what happens with McCarthy, because all you're doing is you're shifting the power from the front office within Dorsey as being kind of the Wizard of Oz to the coaches. Whereas before there was no power in the coaches, all power was with the front office. If they make Elliott Wolf the GM and they bring in McCarthy, McCarthy's going to come in there and be like, I'm calling the shots here. You're not calling the shots. You want me to come in there? I get the heavy weight. I get the preferred stock votes at the shares meeting on what happens, who the players are, who my coaching staff is. Yeah, that's it.
The head coach not only picks his coaching staff, but he is the guy in the draft room that says, this is the guy that I need on my team to fill this spot. Right. Not the general manager per se, not the owner, not the president. That power needs to be with the coach. The coach needs to go to the general manager and say, hey, can you get me up 2 spots? Can you get me up from 7 to 3 so I can take this guy? That's what a GM, and that's what Dorsey was good at doing. Mm-hmm. And having that communication, and he certainly felt comfortable with Freddie because he probably can control it. Freddie wasn't strong enough. He had too much on his plate to even think about that. He didn't even get through a draft per se. So it's going to be interesting to see what kind of coach. I think it's going to be a strong coach. I'll be shocked if it's not McCarthy or McDaniels. It's got to be one of those 2 guys. If they pull somebody out of the weeds, then it's a real crapshoot. It's a real rolling of the dice. And where is the I want a strong coach, I want a leader, I want this. If you're going to pick some offensive coordinator that we've never heard about, who has never been a head coach, I mean, it would be a classic Haslam move, considering the long list of coaches that they've hired that have failed. This would it would be similar to when we were putting the names of the quarterbacks on the back of one jersey, and we had 22 or 21 of them at one point before we got Baker. It would be the same thing with head coaches. Let's just put the head coach name
that's a good
of a jersey and list all the head coaches we've had over the last 10 years. I think we've had 8 in 10 years.
I mean, it makes me long for Butch Davis again. And Butch Davis is a guy who quit in the middle of the season.
Some stability. We need some stability.
All right, so I'm looking at for all the Josh McDaniels people out there, for anybody who's looking for Josh McDaniels. All right, if you look at, and I'm not even gonna not just talk about the fact that his best season was 8-8 with the Broncos, then he was fired mid-season of the next year. I'm not even going to talk about the fact that he's a year and a half experience. I'm not going to talk about the fact that he went to Indianapolis and then decided not to take the head coach and go back to putting that aside for a moment. Let's just look at the success rate of other Bill Belichick coaching tree people that coached under him. Bill O'Brien, okay, did okay in at Penn State, has done okay so far with the Texans. I think Bill O'Brien's probably the best one out of all of them. Bill O'Brien was probably the best. Then you've got Romeo Crennel. We all remember what happened with Romeo Crennel. Not real good. Went 10-6 in 2007. Didn't make the playoffs. All downhill from there. Charlie Weiss. Charlie Weiss did not get a NFL position. Went to Notre Dame and then University of Kansas. Right. Charlie Weiss is out. Eric Mangini. New York Jets 2006, 2008. Browns 2009, 2011. Terrible. Right. Josh McDaniels. Yet to be seen. These are just other guys I'm going to list off. Al Groh. Al Groh from who was, I guess, most recently with University of Virginia from 2001 to 2009. Dude couldn't beat Virginia Tech the entire time. Matt Patricia, Detroit Lions. How many games did they win this year? 3. Mike Vrabel. All right, so Mike Vrabel may be another guy who's like probably
they're going to have some success.
Mike Vrabel might be okay. So, but if you look at it,
they're not.
There's no guarantee with this.
Absolutely not. Yeah, absolutely not. There's no guarantees. You gotta go with your gut. And Dorsey went with his gut with Baker Mayfield, and he returned that confidence in how he came out in that Jets game, 2 years ago, and had a really, really good, remarkable finish to that first season. Get us off that 0-16 schneid and win some games. We almost won 8-8.
If we would have had a kicker that year, we could have made the playoffs.
Yeah,
last year.
So you got to give Dorsey a lot of credit, and the team that picks him up, it won't be the New England Patriots. They've got their organization, they've got their structure, they've got their people. It's those teams that are.
I guess maybe the Dolphins, the Jaguars.
Could be. Somebody's that's in disarray. Carolina.
Atlanta
is in disarray. The Jets are still trying to figure out what the hell to do. The Giants are trying to figure out what the hell to do.
After being fleeced by him
Cincinnati's trying to figure out what the hell to do. Pittsburgh is trying to figure out.
Has anybody in chat? I
want
to ask the people in chat. I know the name Urban Meyer, and the guy Cliff's talking about it. Some other people are. Has Urban Meyer actually been contacted about being given an interview?
Because I have not seen it.
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it either. I think like the ESPNs of the world and the Fox Sports 1 radio guys are talking about Urban Meyer. We're talking about him on Twitter, but I don't think he's been contacted.
No,
so
we have a list of like 8. 3 head coaches, I think, and the rest are all offensive, defensive coordinators from just about everybody. So they want to talk to a lot of people. They have to do the minority thing as far as interviewing a minority as well, according to the rules, the Rooney Rule and so forth. So they're going through a little bit of that. But it's going to be interesting.
I think no matter what, no, Isaiah says no, Kyle Lou no, Matt Roscoe no. So he's not being, he hasn't, excuse me, guys.
God bless.
I don't think, you got to take Urban Meyer out of that. Urban Meyer right now is a fun name to talk about, but I mean, until we actually see some reality on this, we need to put Urban Meyer into the fantasy land and leave him out there for a little bit. Not to say that I wouldn't be happy with it, but I would have been happy with it, Urban Meyer and John Dorsey. Urban Meyer and Elliot Wolf, or Urban Meyer and whomever GM is question marks. Now, if Josh McDaniels is hired, I think that there has to be something going on between the communications. Everybody's saying that Jimmy Haslam is in love with Josh McDaniels. I want to know, And it's going to be interesting to see what we do with that GM spot. If Josh McDaniels gets the job, was it because Josh McDaniels said, I want to have more say? Mm-hmm. And is that potentially something that got Jimmy to say, hey, I'm going to bring in Josh McDaniels. So if you're not on board with this, that's fine. We're going to part ways. Or maybe they just said, hey, we're putting the hammer down and going, Dorsey, you're player personnel guy. That's who we want. But we're going to go a different route with a coach, and you're not going to be part of that decision. Or maybe Dorsey was like, look, I was behind Freddie. I think we should have given Freddie another shot. And maybe he put too much weight in the Freddie Kitchens camp. Again, remember when we were talking about it on the stream, John Dorsey's statement about Kitchens was very short. It seemed like he was pissed off, and that statement read like it wasn't read like a PR statement.
It wasn't like it was my decision. It was a Haslam decision that I had to go along with.
Yeah, he's a good coach. He's a good man.
Coach, right. Wish him well.
Yeah, exactly. It did not seem warm and fuzzy. Whereas the Haslam statement was the communications director wrote that and they stamped off on it. Dorsey didn't do that.
Right.
So that was my first indication. If you go back to watch that stream where we showed those things, that was my first indication that those two communications, they didn't come from the same people. Right. Those people are on the same page.
Yeah, and the reaction of Kitchens when he got back from Cincinnati to be surprised that he was being let go that Sunday night.
Yeah.
After he's had a couple of conversations, I'm sure, with Dorsey during the last couple of weeks, even though he was losing games.
He might have been on the plane with Dorsey. He might have been riding back with him.
Sure. I mean, a lot of things. But I think Freddie, was truly surprised that he got fired on Sunday night, thinking that, that Dorsey had his back. And then he comes to find out, well, Dorsey was just as much on the chopping block as I was. And he tried to save me, but he couldn't. And, he was trying to save his own job and going forward and getting a replacement coach. Yep. And when they tried to change his role, he just said, screw it. I've done a lot for you. You don't appreciate exactly what I've done for you. You're listening to other people or, you hear all the stories of other people when somebody gets their ear, whether it's the president or a senator or a CEO or whatever, somebody gets their confidence up and then they start pointing the finger at bad things that have happened. And they point it at Kitchens and say, hey, Dorsey's not as the end all be all genius that everybody made him out to be. See, he made a colossal mistake that cost us.
Yep.
What did it cost us? It cost us the 9-7 season and a first round, probably getting kicked out of the playoffs. That's what we missed this year. We weren't going to win the Super Bowl. We certainly weren't going to win it with Myles Garrett sitting on the bench and he had absolutely nothing to do with that, unless you think he can get down there and control people and tell them to take them out of the game, before they can do something stupid.
Which you can't do. That Ray Farmer, remember when he was calling down, why aren't you playing Johnny Manziel, and then got suspended.
Right.
Our general manager gets suspended.
Right.
I think you're right.
I'm still in shock. I'm still very disappointed. Why don't you go another year? Why don't you try to line up some more talent, fill in the holes, get a good coach? Why do you have to make this drastic a change?
Okay, so if we try to dissect this a little bit more, if the reports that came out that and he said, and Freddie, with the reports that we're getting from like Ian Rappaport, who spoke to Freddie Kitchens, and Freddie said he was surprised.
Right.
Okay. So with Freddie is Dorsey's guy. Dorsey likes Freddie. He liked the talent that he found. He wanted him. Plus, he had the ability to control him because he was a little bit of a novice when it came to all the politics. Freddie's not a politician. That's why he hadn't got a head coach job yet in his career, because he wasn't a politician. But Dorsey was, and Dorsey's like, this is my guy. So if Freddie comes back thinking, and he's talking to Freddie the whole time.
Sure.
Dorsey and Freddie are talking. So it leads me to believe that the Haslams decided to make their move on Freddie without the blessing from Dorsey.
Yeah.
That's why Dorsey's blurb was so short, and that's why the Haslams one was so long. It's just pure psychology. Looking at how long that was we're really sorry that we have to do this, but we're doing it, and we wish him the best, and blah, blah, blah. They went on and on with all this stuff. Dorsey, he's a good coach, good man, wish him the best of luck to see. It was off. They were off. So that leads me to believe that happened. Now, the other thing, knowing what we've known before the Dorsey era started, right? Before all of this, when Jimmy Haslam was, the articles have been written. Other people who have left the organization have all the stories about it. That Jimmy Haslam would walk around asking everybody their opinion on stuff, and basically the last person to talk to him, the last person in his ear was the one that he would convince him that that's the right move to do. Everybody from, media people that were in-house to coaches to other staff, to everybody had a say. Everybody got their opinion, and he would put you on the spot. What do you think we should do here? And so he would be taking it all in and trying to figure it out, do the math. And everybody was frustrated by it. So now we've got another situation where Paul DePodesta and his crony, the people that are in the organization, in the DePodesta camp, have gotten to the Haslams and decided Dorsey needs to focus on just personnel. We're going to pick the coach. And that didn't work out for Dorsey it didn't work out for him in Kansas City. He's not going to give up power like that. So, but I do honestly think that if we would bring in Mike McCarthy, that Dorsey and McCarthy would be fine. I think that could be good. But if Dorsey just firmly wanted Freddie to keep his job and wanted to keep status quo and wanted to see what Freddie could do in the second year, I think that honestly is probably what happened that created the separation. And as you and I talked on the phone before we went live here, this is a good point to everybody out there. There hasn't been one player that has come out and defended Freddie Kitchens and said, no, Freddie's great. He's the guy. We're going to do better next year, blah, blah, blah. Not a single, every one of them. That's not up to me. I don't make personnel decisions, or I don't make coaching decisions. I just play.
Landry, with leadership, it starts with leadership. It starts in the locker room.
Yep.
It starts with consistency. It starts with not just calling plays out of a playbook and trying to make everything work because you're calling a play according to your scheme, as opposed to trusting players, going with your gut, trusting that players can step up and make plays different than what are in the playbook, that according to your game plan type of thing. Freddie, it was scripted to a large degree off of maybe 10 or 12 plays that he kept running over and over and over again. And some of them would be great with Chubb. If Chubb makes a cutback and he runs 80 yards, or he gets 20 yards or whatever, he makes him look like a genius. And when he gets stuffed 4 yards in the backfield, because both you and I could see that they were going to run the ball and not do anything different to block people coming and give Baker more time to do this or do that, the plays were doomed to fail. And then when you get in third and long and second and long, and then you have a false start because you're still looking at your wristband, trying to call a play, looking over the sidelines, the play clock's running down, and your guys are sitting in their stance for like 10 seconds, 15 seconds, waiting they can't remember what the snap count was. I mean, all those things happen to us throughout the year, not just in one game, but throughout the year.
The consistent thing was the inconsistencies throughout the year.
Right.
Was the fact that we could never figure it out. And yeah, that's on the coaching staff. It's on Freddie, it's on Todd, it's on Steve Wilkes, and that is one of the frustrating things with it. Now, you took away some of the talent. There was a lot of injuries. Myles Garrett swinging the helmet, getting expelled from there's things. You almost got to look at that as an injury, right? But every team has injuries. And you have to be able to do it. It doesn't matter if we had injuries or not. There's no excuse for us to have lost to a 1-14 team to end the season. And that was what it honestly could have all come down to, that Cincinnati game. We could be on a different trajectory. If Cincinnati is a win and we end up going 7-9, having gone, 4-2 in the division? 4-2 in the division. If I am Freddie Kitchens and John Dorsey, I'm going, guys, we're going to clean up the stuff that we did. We're going to clean up the mistakes. We're going to fix some stuff. But we went 4-2 in the division in the in the
And maybe
AFC.
maybe it was good that it wound up that way. I mean, we had a 7 point lead too. We marched right down the field, got a 7 point lead.
Yeah.
So if you're a betting guy, you'd say, "Oh, I already got a 7 point lead, right? Right out of the box." So what do?
Yeah.
They let them come right down the field, score, and it's 7-7.
Yep.
And I think the air when they scored that tying touchdown in a response to our opening drive,
Oh, the
I think
77-yard murder fest where
yeah,
they went down and treated us like Girl Scouts on the way
right.
in.
I think that set the tone for the rest of the game, in that our guys are saying, "Oh God, we're not going to blow these guys out. We're actually going to have to play this game and try to win it." And they never recouped from that. They never got the lead.
Yeah.
Uh, they were trailing the entire time. And if you look at all the things that have come out, and we probably are just looking at the tip of the iceberg in terms of the stories about Freddie and what transpired behind the scenes and so forth. If that's just the tip of the iceberg, and the iceberg is pretty wide and pretty deep in terms of problems, you could almost say, well, maybe it's best that Freddie was let go, because how much of that can you really fix from one year to the next, especially if Freddie's not willing to concede the offensive coordinator position.
Yep.
If you want to, just delve on and devote yourself to being the head coach and running everything, that's great. But don't take on two jobs and then have all this circus around you in terms of player. Imagine if Dorsey went out and got somebody like AJ Green, or he got Fitzgerald, or he got another wide receiver who just was too good to turn down, or some other player that just was like a head case, but he was a great player, and you add him to the mix and throw that person under Freddie Kitchens. I mean, I think it was just too much for him. And I'm just sorry that Dorsey's not going to be around to see who the next coach, or even influence and have a say in who the next coach is going to be. That's strictly going to be a DePodesta and a Haslam decision. And their track record is not that good. I'm sorry. They may get lucky, and they may, pick somebody like McDaniels who brings his own guy in and he does great. And so despite their bad record, despite their poor picks and management in the past,
Yep.
they finally make a good decision by bringing in whoever the coach is, if that guy succeeds. If he doesn't succeed, I mean, the talk about the Haslam's will go on for years if this one backfires.
Well, here's, if you look at the other guys who they're requesting interviews from, another guy, Brian Dable, who was a Browns coach in the past. So with this move with separating from Dorsey, it's either going to be a massively positive thing in getting a head coach like a Josh McDaniels or Mike McCarthy, because the premier top tier coaches aren't going to want to share that much power with the GM. And John Schlegel said it himself, the head coach, if you bring in a good head coach, he's not going to want to report to the GM who reports to the owner. The good head coach is going to want to go right to the owner, right? He's going to want to do that, and he's going to want to be able to make decisions on players and all that kind of stuff. Mike McCarthy has earned that right. Josh McDaniels, I don't know if he's earned that right. I would argue he has not, but I think that because there are really not great coaching options out there right now anyway, and because he's been so hot as an offensive coordinator for New England since he gotten back from Denver, I think that he's going to demand that sort of power wherever he goes. Mm-hmm. So those are the two guys. If we do not end up with one of those two guys, and we end up with a Brian Dable or somebody else, one of the second tier candidates, I think that there could be an all out riot.
Well, not only are you going to wind up with a second tier guy that has never been a coach, so he violates what the Haslams were saying in their manifesto that they put out, and he's not going to be able to bring an organized team with him, and you're going to have another GM brought in that's going to be put into the mix between head coach, GM, and DePodesta and owner, and you got all that noise up there. You got to have the head coach in the draft room with the GM, and those two got to work hand in hand. I don't know if there's other instances we can point to where the GM and the head coach were not on the same page, and they failed. There's probably example after example
Oh,
after
I'm sure.
example in the hash in the trash heap. You just don't hear about them all that much, and then you throw an owner in there that supersedes the GM and even the coach and decides I want that player, just like Haslam did with Manziel. I think he jumped in there and said, "You at the 23rd pick, you're going to take Manziel," um, and you can't have that if you want long-term success. Belichick is the classic guy who's had success after success with the Patriots, and he runs things, the way he wants to because he's the guy that sets up the game plan. He's the guy that coaches everybody. He's the guy that should decide on talent. He knows what he needs and what he doesn't need. The GM may or may not have some input to that, and he may not. He may try to get him a draft choice or so, or move up to help the coach. But if those two aren't on the same page, we got serious problems.
Yeah, and I think that Freddie and Dorsey were on the same page, but the results didn't match. And I
Right,
think that everybody watching those games, it didn't pass the smell test. Even the games we won weren't, other than the Baltimore game,
right,
which other than, I mean, it could have gone either way. We got a lot of breaks in that Baltimore game,
right,
and Chubb, bailed us out when it was starting to get a little rough.
right.
But other than the Baltimore game, it was a disaster. We were embarrassed on national television, bad when we went out to San Francisco. We were embarrassed again against the Patriots, and then we end up starting to put it together towards the end of the year. We start putting it together, and we have one of the best victories at home against the rival, a game we had to win. We end up winning the game in great fashion, picking off Mason Rudolph a whole bunch of times, and then it's ruined by Myles Garrett swinging the helmet. And then we put it together. We ended up beating the Bills, and we beat the Bengals, but it was bad. It was an ugly season. And now the reports about when David Blau came out and was like how unorganized things were in Cleveland, those are bad things on Freddie and his staff.
Right.
I don't know how much of your meetings or anything like that your general manager gets involved with the structure of that, but your coaches do. And that was a bad hire from John Dorsey. That is the one thing. And if he was saying, I am firmly in his camp, I am in the Freddie Kitchens camp, it's tough because like you and I talked about last stream that we did, you don't want to start off another season being every loss he's on the hot seat.
Right.
Right?
When's he? Is it 0-2? Is that when we fire him? And then what do you do then? All the coaches are gone. All your team is in place. You're through your preseason. You're through your practices.
Yep.
The game plan is set. I mean, it would have been really tough on Freddie Kitchens to come back next year.
Yep.
The way he finished, if he had won a couple of those games at the end, you could say, okay, I can't win games without Myles Garrett.
Well, they quit.
So,
You could tell the team quit.
yeah,
You can't lose to a 1-14 team the way that we lost and not say that we quit. I mean, it was
well,
apparent.
you had one of the players saying Hunt was saying they weren't playing 100%. I never saw Chubb quit. I never saw Hunt quit. You never saw Myles Garrett quit. Schobert, is a player to the end. Although, like you said, pointed out the other day, when you're playing 5 yards deep in the middle of the secondary, that's where you're going to make a tackle after the guy's made five or so yards, and that's why Mixon beat us up so bad because he got through the line and then he just tore us up after that. So I mean, it was just a bad way to end the season, and now it's with Freddie gone and now Dorsey gone.
Yep.
Who knows what's coming down the road?
Yeah, it is. it is. It's just gonna be. I mean, hopefully we wrap up the coach real quick.
Good luck.
Hopefully it's like the coach and the position that we were put in is wrapped up real quick. I don't ever want to see Jimmy and D Haslam on my TV screen or anywhere near anything to do with the Browns again. Just don't even just you're there. They should be a passive investment at this point and get out of the way. They're terrible. They're terrible at everything that they do related to football. If they're great at selling diesel fuel and truck stop stuff, that's awesome.
They get in trouble doing that too.
Yeah, yeah. This is our reality right now, and there's a lot of people out there that understand. They understand the passion of Browns fans, and they feel bad. I've talked to Steelers fans. Steelers fans are like, man, you guys just keep. It's unfair what keeps happening to you guys, and that's the thing. We just have to sit there and go, yeah, it just keeps happening.
Right.
You know?
I mean, Dorsey tried to change the culture by bringing in different talent levels at every level, and I, obviously was excited about it at the beginning of the season and just got more and more depressed each week as we kept losing games that we should have won and things weren't turning around the way we had hoped. But now to throw that all, out the window and start all over again, new head coach, new general manager, and fight with these other teams. These other teams are going to make good offers to these other coaches. And what are you going to have to do to get maybe the guy that you want? And then they still have to perform. I mean, you still got to get these players to get out there and perform and buy into the new system. And, maybe it's a 50-50 shot at this point. It's certainly not beyond that. Even if you add more talent, I'm certainly not going to go because the preseason is not going to tell you too much. I mean, you might get some new talent in there, which would help, but we all know what happened with that hype. And it won't be till the first or second game that we'll know whether we're going to be really cheering to make the playoffs next year and have a good season, or we're going to be 0-2 and we're going to be looking like we're idiots again.
Yeah, this is,
the doormats.
Baker Mayfield's been in the league 2 years now, 2 full seasons. He's had 3 different head coaches. Mm-hmm. This will be his 4th in 3 years. And I think that if we end up getting Mike McCarthy, I will be willing to excuse some of this. If we end up with Josh McDaniels, I'm going to have expectations immediately. Really, I'm going to have expectations to win either way with either of these guys.
Right.
But with McDaniels, he's going to really have to prove to me that he's matured, that he's been better, that he deserved this. Because if we kicked out John Dorsey, they should have just said to sit there and go, we couldn't agree on your role. You have a role. You're the general manager. Well, that's what you hired the guy to do.
That's the spin they put on it. But I'm sure it came down to more than that. I think it came down to how much Dorsey wanted to be involved in operations, how much he wanted to be involved in controlling who the next coach was going to be so that they're on the same page and it's my guy, even though I whiffed on the first one. And when the Haslams weren't willing to do that, or DePodesta talked him out of it and said, you can't give Dorsey all that amount of look what he did with Kitchens. Then, they put the best spin on it they can. They say, oh, we just didn't have the right role for him, or he didn't want to take this role, and blah, blah, blah. And the truth will come out a week later, 10 days, 2 months from now, when, people are more free to talk about it. But we won't know about this decision until I would say week after the second game of the season next year. That'll tell me what they're going to do. And also the draft. The draft will be another one.
Yep.
Who do we take in the draft? Who has the input to the draft? And does it fill a major hole that we have, like at left tackle? And who do we pick? And do we trade down? Do we not trade up? Do we get rid of our second round pick? I mean, all those things will start to show us what is going to happen next year and whether today is a disaster or today is the day of, total rebuilding that's going to
Yep.
be good for us next year.
Yeah. Well, hey guys, anybody who's in there, anybody who's currently in chat who's not a subscriber, go ahead and click the subscriber button. Help us out with that. We're trying to get up our subscriber base. We also, as you can see on the scrolling on the bottom, we have our new Patreon ticker at the bottom, so we're going to give you the shout outs for that. Plus we got some cool other stuff. If you happen to own a business, anything like that, we've got some different tiers on Patreon that we can start doing some advertisements for your certain things like that. So check out the Patreon. If you've got a buck, that'd be awesome. If you like what we do, there's a couple different tiers in there. Any amount of support would be awesome.
Right.
If you're not subscribed, please click the subscribe button. All that stuff would really help us out as well. And make sure you get the notification so when we go live, you can be part of it. We are sitting there reading a lot of what's going on, so we can see that there is disagreement amongst Browns fans.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, some people hate McDaniels, some love McDaniels, some
AKA
want
just
McCarthy.
subscribed. So we
Yes.
just got a new subscriber.
Nobody wants McCarthy. I mean, they're, some hate the Haslams. Some say, well, it needed to be done. Freddie needed to go. Dorsey needed to go.
Yep.
I mean, we got 140, 150 guys in chat, and we probably got, that many opinions as far as who's right at this point, who's wrong at this point, where are we going from this point, which makes it all good and exciting and fun to talk about and to chat about. So keep it up. We appreciate your support. Be safe tonight on New Year's.
Yeah, definitely, guys. We just got a couple of new subscribers. AKA is a new subscriber. Ron King was a new subscriber as well. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you subscribing to the channel. Appreciate that. And there's a special animation for if anybody joins on Tim Otts this got to be OTTES. I'm assuming that's Otts. Is a new subscriber as well. Welcome, Tim. There is a special animation for the Patreon. Anybody who does anything on Patreon, we have a special animation for you that I'm really excited. I can't wait for that to go off as well, so we can see that going. But yeah, guys, I think that it's disheartening to know that we have instability again. I was very much in favor of Freddie going. I like Freddie as a guy. I really wish it would have worked out. It didn't, and that was the right move, moving on from Freddie Kitchens. If there are some other coaches out there, I personally, and I know I may be in the minority, and maybe 50-50 with people out there. I'm talking to Mike Ristano from the Lone Dog podcast. He is happy with the move. So I know there's people out there with different opinions on what's going on, but I mean, and there's people out there that are adamantly like locking in Josh McDaniels. Lax Max says it has to be McDaniels. There's a lot of people out there that are talking about that. We'll see. We're just gonna have to wait and see and just pray that eventually this timeline that we're on of Browns utter disappointment going all the way back into the 70s will one day come to an end, and the manna will rain down from heaven of winning games in Cleveland and playoffs, and just one before we die. If we could just get one Super Bowl, that would be fantastic. But all that stuff would be great. But all right, Dad, we've been going for about an hour. Any final parting words here?
No, it's going to be interesting. We'll be back with you guys once they announce who the head coach is going to be, or if there's a general manager change. We'll jump back on and we'll have a big discussion about that. And the expectations will then be set at zero, starting over, and then hopefully we don't buy into the hype and we let the new coach and the general manager and the staff do their thing so that we can be excited about next year. We want to do this channel. We want to win games. It's all about winning games. It's really depressing to be out here talking about a loss that we should have won.
Yeah.
It's one thing to get
getting angry.
Oh yeah, it's just getting frustrating. So hopefully a new coach, GM, whatever,
Yep.
will do that for us. And I'm going to leave an open mind. I'm going to wait and see what the Haslams do and what decisions they make. And I hope you can't make 10 bad decisions in a row. I mean, maybe you get lucky and you make a good one.
I mean,
So I'm hoping they do that and they let this guy run the football program the way it should be run, and we'll enjoy the benefits of it.
even a broken clock is twice right once is right twice a day, right?
You got it. You
So
got
they
it.
got to eventually make it right, make a good decision. Yeah, I agree. Bald Taco 513. Daniel Snyder is a better owner at this point. I got to tell you, I think the Haslams are the worst owners in the NFL, and potentially, I don't know a lot about soccer, but potentially could be the worst owners in professional sports.
And this will just add to their legacy if this turns out to be a flop. I mean, it'll just, I mean, I don't know why they would want to continue to run a non playoff team and to continue to make bad decisions, especially since they're not football people. They never grew up with the game. They don't really maybe understand it that well. If you're a CEO, you delegate and you put your strategy in place, but you don't try to micromanage it. Those guys who micromanage or who just supersede in areas where they don't know, they don't have expertise, are doomed eventually to fail. They may make a good decision every once in a while, but they're doomed to fail. And I think the Haslams, this is another big roll of the dice. And I'm sure they're hearing it in both ears, and we'll hear it for the next, maybe at least 2 weeks until we get a coach. They're going to hear it, how this decision made some people happy and a lot of people mad.
Yeah, it was a lose-lose situation for them. They made the right decision on Freddie Kitchens. 100% of the fan base was on the, we got to get off. 99%. I saw one or two people that were like, we should give Freddie another year.
Right.
The vast majority of people were in the get rid of Freddie camp, right? 98%. But then they just ruined that by making this decision to get rid of Dorsey, where I agree there are people in there that are blaming this on Dorsey. There's also people on there that think we should get rid of that are off the Baker Mayfield train.
Right.
I think that's crazy. I think
I do too.
I think getting rid of John Dorsey was not the right move. I will go down and say that.
I agree.
Guys, timestamp this. I think it was the wrong move to do that, but time will tell. And we'll see.
Prove us wrong.
Yeah,
prove us
me
wrong.
wrong. If it's Josh McDaniels, even though I am not a Josh McDaniels guy personally, I am much more in the Mike McCarthy camp. Anybody out there, go on YouTube, watch the Mike McCarthy and Peter King interview, the Mike McCarthy project. I think that told me a lot. I was on the fence. I had a bunch of reservations about how things went down in Green Bay, and then it all started to make sense. Matthew Lamana, thank you very much for the subscription. A lot of what McCarthy was doing in Green Bay made sense as to what the things were. But hey guys, I gotta run. Baby's screaming in the background. Thank you guys all. Thanks for the new subscribers. Check out us on Patreon. We'll be back as soon as there is breaking news about the Cleveland Browns. We'll be back. Hit that notification button. Go Browns.
Go Brownies.